as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day.
Became a nightmare. I'm gonna do a walkthrough.
Over 1,300 pieces of evidence were collected from the crime scene.
Scratch marks along the wall.
There was no doubt something paranormal was going on.
And for that exact reason, I'll continue my research to drive away the darkness.
Thanks for tuning in to ASAP Radio. My name's Ben Robison.
And I'm Nicole Kitsanis.
So how you doing this fine Monday day?
It is good for a Monday. It's nice and warm.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we need that too because we're going to be going camping this weekend. Well, technically we're leaving Thursday, but
yeah, we'll be gone for the whole weekend with a ton of kids.
Yeah, heading out to the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest where I was so fortunate to be shot at.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully we'll not get that this time, but I'll pack some Kevlar.
Right.
Just in case.
That's always a good idea. And bring hairspray. I don't know.
It
seems like we need to have hairspray.
Big hair, don't care.
Yeah, big hair, don't care. So, but anyways, tonight our guest is going to be a local paranormal researcher, author, archaeologist, and ex-military brat of sorts, Jeff Davis, and he's going to join us here in a little bit. But before we jump in with him and start that going, let's kind of recap last weekend. We went out on an overnight investigation.
Yeah, that was lots of fun, I guess I'll say, of sorts. It was my first time staying up, pulling an all-nighter that long, actually, going when the sun was up and leaving when the sun came up again. Yeah,
it's one thing to do these investigations where you're showing up at 9, 10 in the evening, and then you turn around and pack up, around 4 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's another thing to get there at 7-ish and stay in literally until like 8 or 9 in the morning the following day. So this time we brought along with us. It's always nice when you have about 3 people. And so since ASAP is only you and I, we brought along Kayla Ohala this time with us.
Yeah, it was nice working with her.
Yeah, she's really great. She's very mindful. She's very diligent. And, she's obviously experienced too, so it's nothing new. However, it was new for her to do an all-nighter like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of do it in the fashion we were, which was an organic approach, meaning we allowed, we set up our equipment, but we allowed for the family to still remain in the home and go about their evening. They watched a movie, the kids went to bed, and we just kind of observed.
Yeah.
And we went out in, different times of the night to kind of, if you want to call it, kind of take a register of
kind of acclimate with the house again.
Yeah, and kind of get an idea of what energy was going on, if any. And so in this case, it seemed really quiet all night long, and that's part of the challenge. You don't know when the spirits are going to come out or perform or do whatever. So this was just like anything. It's a gamble trying to see if you can get them to interact or just do their normal thing.
It'd be really nice if they were on a schedule and could give us that schedule and be like, from like 2 to 4 in the morning, I'm going to be walking the halls and,
it's
opening
courtesy,
doors.
right, to do that.
You'd think.
You would think, but
no.
I don't know. Also, the other element that we tried to use as a way to kind of compare and contrast was the father of the home, the man of the house. He was at work. He works a graveyard shift, or graveyard or swing. But anyways, I think graveyard.
Yeah.
And so he came home roughly around 4.
He came home just after 4, yeah.
Yeah, and that's normally when we would have been gone. So that was interesting because it gave us the opportunity to see what it was like once he came into the home, especially since there's a lot of potential lineage of sensitivity on his side of the family, and a lot of the experiences have been surrounded around him.
Yeah, he seems kind of like the catalyst a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I would say. So we're really excited to be able to, to go through all of this that we've collected, because we had a power over Ethernet style high definition DVR system recording all night long. We even had digital audio recorders placed in certain places, so that way we can monitor, real time and listen in and see if we can hear anything. And we heard some odd sounds, so we're really excited to go through that. However, with our personal family trip coming up, we're probably not going to be able to dive into that until next week, but looking forward to see what we found on that.
Yep, it'd be really interesting.
Yeah. So, what else? What else do we have to talk about?
Well, we kind of talked about it on our last show that we just did with Carissa and Philip, or Phil. The Port Gamble Ghost Conference is coming up in October.
Yes.
So if you guys haven't checked that out yet, it's the 6th annual Ghost Conference in Port Gamble, October 23rd through 25th. Ben and I will be there giving a class. And
we'll also have a booth.
Yep, we'll have a booth set up all 3 days. But our class is on Saturday, the 24th at 6:30. But there's going to be lots of cool speakers there. Lots of cool people in general.
Yeah, a lot of great colleagues, friends,
good group,
new people to meet, which is always great. New friendships and alliances to be forged. Some people I know of that I have never met personally are going to be there, and I'm looking forward to actually meeting them in person. And it's going to be awesome. But so, how would people go about getting that information?
Yeah, they can check out the Facebook page. If they just search for 2015 Port Gamble Ghost Conference, they have a Facebook page. They also have a website where they can learn more about who's speaking, what classes are lined up, investigations, all that kind of good stuff, and buy tickets for them, because you do need tickets to go on the investigations.
Yeah.
So if you go to portgamble.wix, that's wix.com/pt-gamble-paranormal.
Sweet. Cool. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, if there's nothing else, I say we just we get in touch with Mr. Davis and start this off.
That sounds good to me.
All right. Everybody stand by.
All right.
Okay, so we've got with us tonight Jeff Davis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and I know this is kind of for everybody else's benefit, but this is round 2. We did an in-person one, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot, and we may be able to do more of that in the future. However, the quality didn't work out as nicely as I hoped, and I already had my suspicions, but we're really grateful that you're willing to be such a good sport and sit down with us again, this time over the internet, and do this again.
Well, every author likes repeating themselves time and time and time again, so that's fine.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, and, speaking of that, like I had prefaced before we brought you on, you're a local paranormal researcher, you're an archaeologist, a historian, you were in the military for years, and you're also an author. So, nonetheless, we're really glad to have you back on the show to talk about some of the stuff we chatted about the first time. And in that first time, we kind of wanted to find out, more for the listener's sake as well, just kind of how this all started for you. What blossomed and piqued your interest to get into the field of paranormal research?
It was because I was probably the weirdest kid living in Vancouver at the time. And I probably have arm wrestling, with you or anybody else who probably says the same thing. Everybody thought I was weird as a kid, and I used to go down to the Fort Vancouver Regional Library, and the paranormal section was in one particular stack, and it was a little taller than me. I must have been 14 years old when I started first going there, and it was always just out of arm's reach, seemingly, so I had to go get a little stool to get the latest books that were coming back in, because a lot of people were reading those books. And there was one great author who I think, in a way, was bypassed by time and progress. You remember Hans Holzer?
Yes.
Hans Holzer really set the bar for making an interest in the paranormal, ghost hunting, if you will, respectable, scientific, or at least let's talk about it out in the open.
Yeah, he was kind of considered, I think, like the godfather of modern paranormal research. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the thing I liked about it was he always set things in a historical and personal context. A haunted house is not interesting. Who haunts the house and why? That's the interesting part.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So he kind of was the person that you focused on, and really, I don't know, did you model yourself somewhat after?
I did. I did intentionally, because especially his earlier work, it was really almost anthropological.
Right.
Here he is, picking up a clairvoyant sometimes not. Let me go visit this place. Here's the historic background on it. Here's what everybody says. Make up your own mind.
Right. So, after you started reading these books, did you find yourself actually, venturing out there trying to, do some of your own investigating or research?
It took some years. Paranormal investigations, as they do them today, whether or not your focus is technical or whether your focus happens to be clairvoyant based, is come a long ways. Holzer wandered around seemingly just with a satchel and sometimes a Polaroid camera, and I don't know why I didn't until I was over 30. And as far as investigating, in part because I was too busy doing things.
Especially being in the military too.
Yeah, I joined the Army Reserves when I was 17, so I was still in high school. Went to college full time for about a year and a half, and then I spent 3 years on active duty. Came home, went back to college, had 2 part-time jobs, and it really was not until I was, I think, 31 or 32 that I really became interested. And my interest was really more along the lines of this anthropological, find the story. So I didn't really get into the technical, and even though I knew how it should be done. Do you remember Peter Underwood of the Ghost Club?
The name is familiar, and I think only because you brought this up the first go-around. Refresh my memory again on that.
Sure. Peter Underwood was the head of the Ghost Club, which is based out of London. The Ghost Club has been around since the mid-1800s, making it probably the world's oldest paranormal society. And Underwood put out a book, paperback, called The Ghost Hunter's Guide, and you can probably still get it on Amazon used. He now knows what's going on because he passed on a couple of years ago. But it was all non-tech, non-gizmo. It was bring these kind of colored threads and bells and tripwire cameras, this kind of stuff. And he brought a lot of psychology to it. And nice. I always enjoyed that. And so, so pardon my landlord coming in and, all right. So,
no worries.
Okay. Anyway, what ended up really starting this was that whole mix coming together of me being curious as an anthropologist as well as the technical end. And what spurred this was in the mid-1990s, I lived in England for a year and I did my graduate work at the University of Sheffield. And on my way home, before coming home, I wanted to get little presents for people. And I came on a gift shop and they had Ghosts of Sheffield, volumes 1 through 4. And
Nice.
these were very simple books. This little old lady took a whole bunch of 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, and she had everything typed up in double columns, and then she took it to the English equivalent of the Kinko's, had them photocopied, folded them
Folded in half.
over, and they were, I think, 1 or 2 pounds, or about $1.50 to $3 a piece. And I said, you know what? If she can do that and make money, so can I.
Right.
So that really kind of started it, was that little booklet. And my first one was Ghosts of Clark County, and I paid to have 100 copies printed, sold all 100 of them within a couple of weeks, and used that money to fund my first set of books. And of course, you can't write a book about ghost hunting unless you do a little ghost hunting.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you would hope so. You'd
Yeah.
hope that whoever's writing these books does it, but...
And of course, my first big experience was the Vancouver Barracks Post Hospital. And
let's talk about that. I that's obviously, and you know this, I don't have to even say it, but I mean, that's, for the Pacific Northwest, that's the bee's knees when it comes to the place everybody and their mom wants to get in and nobody can. So I'd love to hear about this.
Yeah, I would like to get back in too. It really was, and the analogy, I still believe in this. It's sort of like you and your family decide, oh, we're going to go hiking up into the woods. You know, you've got a little cabin at Jellystone National Park, and you say, oh, we're just going to go hiking up this hill. It's kind of a foggy day. You've got your picnic basket. Ranger Smith warned you about Boo Boo and the other bears. And as you walk, the sun burns off all of the fog, and all of a sudden you find you're walking up El Capitan. And that was really what it was like, visiting and staying overnight in the Vancouver Barracks Post Hospital, because I knew from talking to the employees there that it was an active haunt. I mean, let's face it, early 1900s hospital. It saw, among other things, after World War I, it saw the soldiers coming back, and then 40 or 50 of them dying from the Spanish flu, but hundreds and hundreds of them being ill. World War II, it also saw overflow from World War II, soldiers coming back from the South Pacific mostly, even the Aleutian Islands. So it's seen a lot. It's seen bad medicine and
bad practices, probably.
Well, what we would know today is bad practices, but at the time, the best they could do with really, I mean, when was it that Pasteur actually figured out that you should pasteurize milk, and when did they come up with the rabies virus? Not that long ago.
Right.
So from the very beginning to the very end, we had weird stuff happen. When we arrived, it was myself and my wife Janine arrived in one car. My friend Brian arrived in another, and we actually wore those things called watches, which people who have cell phones don't use anymore.
What is this device you speak of?
Inside of this is a little gremlin that will make the hours change. Yeah.
Witchcraft.
Exactly.
Witchcraft.
So we set our watches on in our car. We had, of course, clock radio, and so we set our watches by that. And I'm going to jump forward. When we left, maybe less than 12 hours later, all of our watches had different times from each other and a different time from that clock radio. We were off by, I think, about spread between 10 and 15 minutes.
Okay.
And that in itself is an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some kind of just time loss effect that took place. And I'm correct me, that happened. So you set the watches prior to going inside the hospital, and then when you guys left, you guys discovered that they were all off by 10 to 15 minutes.
Correct.
Wow.
And none of our watches had exactly the same time either, which was kind of interesting.
It affected everybody differently.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So what was it like? The whole, I mean, what did you, I guess, what was your guys' approach going in? Uh-oh. I think we may have lost Mr. Davis. We did lose him.
He didn't want to answer that question.
He did not want to answer that. Stand by.
Okay.
I'll bring him back in. Oh, are you there?
I am.
All right. Yeah, let's you know what? Maybe we will try to see if we can go about it without video. You can turn your video off. Maybe that'll improve the quality. I like looking at you. You're a handsome guy, but yet the internet is trying to player hate this situation.
Nice
Okay, so how do I turn off my...
Should have a little... There you go. You got it. All right, so what was your guys' approach going into the hospital?
Well, you know, it was, I hope, understandably amateurish. Bear in mind, this is the mid-1990s, so all these computerized gizmos didn't exist. The biggest technology available were VHS video recorders that you would go ahead and hold over your shoulder. You remember they weighed about 20 pounds? And magnetic tape cassette recorders. That was about as high-tech as we could get. And so we did use them. We, first and foremost, we went in, made sure the doors were locked. We went the first floor, second, and then eventually the third floor. This building has a basement, a first floor, ground floor, and one large floor above it, and then an attic space that's partially finished, partially not. So we wandered around there, and my friend Brian, it was his video recorder, and he'd used it several times. He never had a technical problem. And one of the first things that happened about 45 minutes into us being there was we went into one of the wards on the second floor. And as soon as we went into that ward room, he started having battery problems. He got the battery warning light for a minute or so. Then the camcorder shut off. So we left and went into the central hallway where there's a little bit better light. He played with the battery a little bit, took it out, put it back in, and the camcorder started working. So we wandered around for a couple minutes, and then we went back into the ward, and then the camcorder shut off after a minute or so. So we took it out, repeated the procedure, it started working, and we went back a third time, and as soon as we went in the doors, the camcorder stopped working. So the message to us was pretty clear. You're not going to report in there.
Do you know what that ward was used for?
It was a general patient ward. It was just one big open room, and you probably could have fit. It was wide enough to have beds on either wall. Too bad you can't see my arm gesture since we cut off the video. But you probably could have fit 50 people in it.
Wow. So it was big.
It was. And after this building stopped being used as a hospital, that became a classroom for teaching various military subjects. Now, there were some isolation, semi-private rooms on the top floor, and you reach them by this one long staircase, and when you reach the head of the stairs, you would kind of make a left turn and dogleg around, and there actually was an isolation door. There was a large, heavy metal door on rollers that you could have actually blocked that hallway and blocked people in. And as I recall, there were 3 or 4 rooms big enough to fit maybe 4 or 5 beds in. And so those would have been the isolation rooms.
Why would they do that, though? Why would they block them off? What was the purpose of that?
Just for there are many reasons why you want to isolate patients.
Like a quarantine type thing?
Yes. And it could be mental quarantine. It could be physical for various diseases. Multiple purposes. I mean, and I brought this up in my first book where I included this story. Even into the early 20th century, a lot of people involved in psychology, one of their theories was if we just isolate these patients with mental illnesses, they'll be better because we notice that they just kind of curl up into a ball, and that's much better than having them screaming and yelling.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So while you guys were there, did you have anything crazy happen? You obviously had some battery drain take place. but did you guys have anything? Did any ghosts jump out and like arm wrestle you or do a dance or anything?
No, we did not have that happen. However, we had interesting situation in the infamous ladies' room on the second floor.
Okay.
And that was interesting because the phenomena continued between visits. Oftentimes, as you know this, you go there once and something happens and it never gets repeated, no matter how many times you come back.
Right.
So in this particular instance, again, I'm trying to remember, we were there for maybe 2 hours. We were on the ground floor having a snack, and I needed to go to the bathroom, and I did not know where the first floor bathrooms were. So
hey, Jeff, I have to stop you real quick. We keep looking at each other. It sounds like, I mean, are you like moving your laptop around? We hear this constant shuffling sound and then almost like this like ticking sound, like a little...
Like a tap, 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 tap.
Yeah, like a tap, tap, tap. And I'm thinking to myself, what is he doing now that the video's off?
No, not at all.
Wow, that's bizarre. So I don't know what that's all about. It literally sounds like, I don't know, somebody's moving some kind of metal plate around on the desk and then like followed with some like tapping.
No.
It's not happening now.
Yeah, it's quiet right now, but I don't mean to interrupt you. We kept looking at each other going, what is that noise? So anyways,
talking about the hospital.
Oh man. Yeah, right.
The spirits are getting antsy.
Yeah. Especially when we're talking about the ladies' room.
Yeah. Where was I?
You were up in the ladies' rooms.
Yep.
Okay, so up in the ladies' room on the second floor, and I like to joke about this because not very many men go into women's restrooms without going to jail. So right. I went in, and I really didn't know what to expect. I do know ladies' rooms are supposed to be nicer than men's rooms, but this isn't a former military hospital. So I opened the door, went in, turned on the lights, and I saw to the left there were a series of 4 wooden stall doors, and they were kind of louvered wood. So I did do the first thing anybody does in a haunted building. I went ahead and checked all 4 stalls.
That's right.
Smart man.
And what I found was, and this is kind of a little fuzzy thinking that the Army's famous for, these stall doors, instead of opening outward, they actually open inward. So you had to actually push the door open, kind of get into the stall.
Right.
And then you could close the door once you were inside if you moved around it. And these were about the size of an old-fashioned phone booth, for those people who remember those.
Yeah, so those are very small quarters right there, especially when you have to fight a door to get in and then turn around and close the door.
Yeah, and they were spring-loaded to actually close. And this factors into what happened at the end of the visit. Now, one of the stalls actually had a water heater in it, and the other 3 had ordinary commodes. And the thing that was interesting to me was that the toilet seat lids and the seats themselves were all up. And I did think,
wow.
Yeah, I thought, wow, this is something about women I didn't know.
There's a different kind of woman here.
So, was fate leading me astray?
Maybe.
I was waiting for
I got all sorts of visions going through my mind right here thinking about this, but I'm sure you were perplexed. Did you set them down or did you leave them as is?
Well, I'd been married long enough to know that the toilet seat lid goes down. So right. I did put them all down, and after I finished my biological business, and I went downstairs, and I told my wife and I told Brian what had happened. And I think my wife is the one who said, oh, the janitor probably cleaned them and left them up. So I leave it at that.
Yeah. Seems plausible.
Yeah. No, it must be the ghost.
Right. A male ghost that at that. So
that's right. So
you had a lot of business to attend to.
Yeah.
Now, about an hour later, Brian had to go to the bathroom, and I gave him directions. And he came back a couple minutes later, and said, "Jeff?" "Yes, Brian?" "I thought you said that you left the toilet seat lids down." "Well, I did." "Well, they're all up again." So we ran up the stairs, and sure enough, he said that he had lowered the toilet seat lids himself, but in that time, all of them were up again. All three were up again. And so we thought, that's mighty cool.
That is really cool.
That is cool.
And did you guys, you said you had a regular camera, right, with you?
A camcorder, yes. I don't remember if we brought a standard film camera or not. But we did camcorder. We went back a couple more times. We went through the building, which took about 45 minutes to an hour to just walk through the building. And we made a point of lowering the toilet seat lids and checking for that effect. And again, I'm going to jump forward. We thought everything was okay, and we were just getting ready to leave. And we came in with the camcorder and we're taking pictures. And I remember saying, "See, all of them are down. This must have been just us being crazy."
Right.
And I didn't think about it, but one of the toilet seats was down, and the stall door was also closed. And I had remembered in that particular stall, in order to actually open the door completely, you actually had to raise the toilet seat lid, because the lid stuck out just enough that you couldn't open the door all the way. You had to actually get the door partially open,
right,
raise the lid, then open the door. And so I had actually done that, and I had closed the toilet seat lid, and the door had been held open by the toilet seat. But when we came that last time, no, all the doors were closed. So something had raised the toilet seat, the door closed, and then lowered the toilet seat again.
And that would have taken quite a bit of energy, too, for a spirit to have, manipulated that to get it past that and...
yes.
Yeah, make the door close. It was obviously adamant that it wanted that door closed.
Yes, and the lid's down.
And the lid's down, which is weird because they were up
before.
Maybe they got to the point that they're like, all right, you guys want the seats down. I can handle the seats being down, but the door has to be closed. We got to have a little privacy.
All sorts of different criteria going on there. Wow. So what else happened?
Because I've jumped around several times, imagine we made our last sweep through the building, and this being on the second floor, we then went down into the basement, and that's where we decided to take our nightly nap. And part of the reason we did this is we were not the first people in that hospital building. There had been a woman a couple of months before who had been given permission to kind of camp out in the basement, and she felt that a malevolent force told her to proverbially get out.
Wow, that was nice.
That was excellent.
Well, thank you very much. So, that factored into our decision to stay down there, and I couldn't help but be not skeptical in an unhealthy way. But I'll tell you what, if you're alone down in that building at the time, they had the building was actively heated and air conditioned. So there was all of the furnace and heating plant was all in that basement, and they had pipes running all over the place to eventually reach that third story to heat up there, the first and second. And there were probably two different generations of other heating plants, coal-fired and steam heat, also in that building. So there are all these pipes all over the place, and the system would come on, and it would chugga, and then the pipes would heat up, and then the heating system would turn off, but the pipes would start cracking as they cooled down. It was a pretty intense, and we knew what most of that noise was. Right. Now, I'm not sure how long we were down in that basement space, a couple of hours asleep, and the way we were set up, and this hallway was very, very wide. I'd say the hallway is maybe 12 feet wide. And on one wall, there was an extra large conference table, maybe 4 feet wide. And opposite it was a couch against the opposite wall, and open floor space of 5 or 6 feet in between. So my friend Brian laid down on the conference table, and I laid down on the couch. And my wife, Janine, actually was being nice to me because my back had been hurting me. So she took a thin foam rubber pad, and she was sleeping on the floor. And it turned out she was really lucky.
Oh, really?
Now,
how so?
Well, what ended up happening was, again, I'm not sure how long we were asleep, but I woke up to this kind of squeaky noise, a metallic squeal, and if I could try and reproduce it,
I love the sound effects.
Not very well, I know. Sorry, but
awesome.
So I opened my eyes and I looked directly across the room, and there was Brian, and his eyes were huge, and he was looking at me, and he whispered, "It's not me." You know, the stress does amazingly weird things to how we react to it. So I just kept on looking at him, and I whispered back, "What's not you?" Or something like that.
I love this story.
And he, or even just, "What?" So he spread his arms wide so he was kind of like making a T, and I could see he locked himself up and he was stiff, and I could see that the table was shaking under him as he was all stiffened up, and it was that shaking noise that was making the squeaking.
Oh, like the legs of the table or something squeaking?
And so stress continued, and I whispered, "Well, get off." And he rolled off that table, and he, after doing this kind of roll, he ended up channeling Bruce Lee or something like that, and facing it, ready to do battle with the forces of evil.
Right.
And it stopped shaking.
As soon as he got off, it stopped?
Yeah. Now, some people have suggested that there was some kind of, he was shaking himself in his sleep, maybe, but then again, he straightened himself right out, and I could see he was stiff. Other people have suggested some kind of harmonic tremor because of traffic. Crossing Interstate 5 is only about 100 feet away. I don't know, but it was an interesting phenomenon, even if it wasn't natural.
That would have to be spot on timing, though, if he just happened to roll off and the traffic stopped. And
yeah, could have been that. I was thinking maybe it was, like you were saying, suggested that it might have been him that was causing it, but when you saw that he was laying flat and it was still, shaking under him, almost as if something was saying get off, or it could have been those other explanations as well. Yeah.
Now, here's the interesting thing about trying to find, quote, plausible and logical explanations for what some people think is paranormal phenomena. How many coincidences do you need before you say,
Right.
Way many coincidences.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a very fair, a way to look at things too. So,
did anybody try and get back on the table to see if it was like a weight thing, or did you just say, "Oh, we're done"?
It is high? Washington.
No, it was actually about that time that we all decided it was time to go home. And we made our final sweep through the building, and then found that the toilet seat lid in the final movement of the seat and lids.
Right, being in the position they were. Yeah,
and I was allowed in a couple more times, and the second time I went in with a regular magnetic cassette recorder with, this time, 2-hour tapes, so that they would be 1 hour on each side. And came in with another friend, and we every hour went back, opened the door, reset the tape, and then sealed the door. I had a special ring and some clay, and the door was no one had ever gone in the door, otherwise we would have seen that. And and you know this, Ben, you just got done with an investigation. How many hours do you have to spend going through material?
Yeah. We just talked about that right before we brought you on, that we got lots. Yeah, we got lots and lots. So no matter how quick you try to go through it, it still takes forever because you're going to be rewinding, re-listening, or re-watching, anything that you suspect. So it always takes at least twice as long, if not longer.
Exactly. And so since the TV shows didn't exist and I didn't have any fans willing to listen to my stuff for me, this is when you and I should get TV shows to have people do all this work for us for free.
Right.
Anyway, once I got to oddly enough, the tape that started around midnight, in a period starting probably about 8 minutes after midnight to about 20 minutes after midnight, I actually got sounds inside the room. Some of what may have sounded like somebody coughing or walking around inside, as well as the sounds of these stall doors opening and closing. And the very last time, it was the loudest. These sounds got louder and louder progressively until this very last kind of outburst.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I went crazy and played it for everybody. And I didn't understand the technology very well. These 1-hour audio cassettes, the reason they can record 1 hour on the very same size cassette as a 30-minute audio cassette is because the tape is much, much thinner. And because of that, any recordings made tend to degrade in sound the more often you play them.
Right.
So I did get them digitized, and they are on my website for people to listen to. And,
very cool.
Yeah. And
yeah. I was going to say, this is probably a good spot for us to take a quick break and then come back and pick up where you left off there and then move forward with the rest of the show.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to ASEP Radio. This is Ben Robinson.
And this is Nicole Katsanis.
So we're going to pick back up here with Mr. Jeff Davis and let him kind of talk about the rest of his time out at the Barracks Hospital here in the beautiful city of Vancouver, Washington. But before we do that, I'd like to give a shout out to Mike Smith over at the InfoSub.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Mike Smith, InfoSub, he kind of gets our radio out there so everybody in the world can listen to us. So you can listen to him on his website, http infosub.listentomyradio.com. That's the number 2, not spelled out. Or you can find him on Facebook at the InfoSub, and InfoSub is one word.
Yep.
So thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. All right, so Jeff, why don't you, just kind of pick back up where you left off there, explaining some of the things that you had happen the next time, especially you were using thinner cassette tape that allowed you to do 2 hours, 1 hour on each side of it, and you ran into some issues with the quality, but you've had those digitized since then?
Yes, I have. And really, this was for people who are younger than the age of 35. They're probably saying, "What? Oh, come on! You had trouble getting these digitized?" Yeah, actually,
yeah, right.
I ended up having to go to downtown Portland to a sound studio, and I paid them, I want to say something like $75 to just run through first 15 minutes of this regular audio cassette and then digitize it and turn it to wave formats for me.
Right.
And so I did end up using the old functions on Microsoft on Windows to slice it into finite bytes. But yeah, they are posted on my website. If I could give the URL for that.
Oh yeah, definitely. You're welcome to do that now and even at the very end of the show. So sure.
Okay. The website is ghostsandcritters.com. It's all one word spelled out. Ghostsandcritters.com. And if somebody, it's a free website, and the part of the problem is I've been maintaining it for 15 years now. So if you tried printing it, it's about 100 pages long.
Wow.
There are some bars, little button bars on the left, and I think you can reach the sound bites I'm talking about on either Military Ghost or Ghost Sounds. I think both have links that will take you to the actual audio recording, the bytes.
Okay. Good.
So, we can put a link on our Facebook page.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we'll definitely do that as well. Good idea. Okay. We'll throw that up there and promote your site as well. So, did you have any other weird experiences or happenings when you investigated the barracks?
Well, my father was stationed at the barracks when I was a kid, and when I was 17, as I said earlier, I joined the Army Reserves, and even though I was on active duty from time to time, I always seemed to end up coming back to the barracks, and I was in and out of 6 or 7 of those buildings down there. I was stationed in, or it was my building, substantial numbers of times. And this is the nice thing about approaching this kind of anthropologically, is just talking to people who've been there for years, because there were a lot of civil servants who had been there for like 20 or 30 years before I even joined up. And some of them seemed to stay there for 10 or 20 years too after I got there. So they would be able to pass on experiences to me and to others. So there is quite a lore of stories surrounding most of these buildings. And I mean, it'd probably be a whole separate show.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, and actually I should have, when I said barracks, I really meant to talk about the barracks hospital, since we had been talking about that. So my apologies for muddying the waters there. I know you had mentioned before something about like a time loss, like where your watches were off.
Yes, and I'm not sure if anybody else experienced it. And if somebody would go in and only spend 8 hours, which is about what we did, 8 or 10 hours in there, they might well just think their watch had gone a little wacky. But yeah, we left after the toilet seat lid incident and on that first visit, and that is when we went out and we were trying to be semi-official, and we cross-checked times and found out all of our watches had the wrong time, or different times.
Right, and you had synced them before going in.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it was on this second visit that I got the audio recordings. And unfortunately, I never had anything to really top those 2 visits. I went back 3 or 4 more times, and really we didn't have that much happen. And then the civil servant who was the manager of the building transferred, and there really was not that much interest in bringing or allowing me or other people in as ghost hunters. And people started showing up at odd times, and that really began kind of the bad fallout from becoming a ghost hunter's haunt, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's vandalism.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been many times where it's been broken into, and people then been caught and confessed to being these ghost hunters, and it's just, it's really made it more difficult. It's I don't know if there'll ever be an opportunity ever again for anybody since when you were there, which is too bad, because I think it's such a neat place. So many people would love to have an opportunity to go in there and respectfully do research, but there's always a bad apple out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which actually was the impetus, the reason why you and I talked about me coming on was actually about one of your set of Facebook posts it's about 3 weeks ago now, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you went Bigfoot hunting. Well, excuse
Yep.
me, Bigfoot researching.
Well, yeah. So it's funny. I have the big, I hate the term ghost hunter, and I know people for the most part use it because that's a popular way to describe, folks that are doing paranormal research, and most of them mean it, affectionately. Without going into a rant or a side topic here, I believe there are differences between people who are ghost hunters and people who are paranormal researchers. But when you really get down to the root, the definition of the word hunt, if the people that I am referring to as ghost hunters didn't conduct themselves in the way they did and cause so much damn problems, I wouldn't have such an issue with the word hunt, because hunting for something doesn't mean you're actually going out there to kill it. Although, the way some of these folks act, especially with posts I've seen and just their approaches and everything, it definitely sounds like they're trying to go out there and shoot and kill a ghost, which is clearly not possible unless you're part of the Ghostbuster team with some ray packs or whatever. But
across the streams.
Right, exactly. But when it comes to like Bigfoot or Sasquatch, I use the word Bigfoot hunt, not because I'm armed to the teeth and trying to shoot one and whatnot, but it makes more sense. It seems weird when you say I'm going out on a Bigfoot investigation, because you're not really like investigating, and it's not so much it's like research. I mean, it is and it isn't, but it just doesn't feel right to say Bigfoot research or Bigfoot investigation. So anyways, all of that just to say it's okay to say Bigfoot hunt.
That's okay. That's okay. And this little exchange that we just had really is, to me, one of the most important things is in paranormal research, in cryptozoology, the search for supposedly extinct critters. There is no university that teaches this stuff. Consequently, there is no real dictionary and glossary of terms that 100% of the people agree upon.
Right.
And then what happens is people will have a same concept in their minds. They'll use different phrases. And it's so easy, though, especially via email, to offend somebody inadvertently, accidentally. And for whatever reason, we live in such a reactionary society that once you've offended people, for some reason, many people are unwilling to hear an explanation or a clarification.
Right.
And that was, thank you for asking me on the show, because I want to, if I can, enlarge a little bit on what exactly happened.
Sure, please do. Yeah.
Now you had just come back from a little stint on the Gifford-Pitchell National Forest.
Yep.
With one of your research partners, who happens to be in training to become a wildlife biologist. And you posted some photos and said, we got some stuff on audio, and I paraphrase there. And I know you, and I know you're a very careful researcher, but you have a much larger audience than I do, and I had a whole bunch of, I read several responses that read almost like giddy school kids saying, ooh, we're going to go out and do it too.
Yeah.
And so I took the opportunity to write something very short, which I'm paraphrasing myself, said, you got to be careful and think of the consequences of what you're doing. And I had worked for the Gifford-Pinchot for several years, about 5 years, year-round. And I remember distinctly we had this group of people who showed up, and they went to a place called Skookum Meadows toward the end of, just before the winter snows. And they played what they thought were Bigfoot calls, and they threw apples in the marsh, and various other things. And they didn't check with the wildlife biologists, and that was an exclusion area against hunters and really heavy human traffic, because what happens to a lot of these critters, that's where the female elks will gestate before giving birth. And so sometimes if they're really spooked, they'll spontaneously abort their fetuses. And that was behind my comment. And it was a short, brief comment. I should have enlarged on it. And so I got a response from you that sounded very much like Robert De Niro saying, "So, you're saying I shouldn't go to the woods?" But
are you saying what I did was unwise, my friend?
Yes. You talking to me?
You talking to me? Yeah, and that is the thing. It's so hard to tell, what it was. Because I know when I was asking that question, I was like, oh, crap. So was it unwise for us to go out there and blast these calls? Because I had never thought of that. And I'm always learning, and I had mostly focused on supernatural phenomena versus cryptozoology. And so lots more learning, lots more things to come from. And I was like, oh shit, what did I do wrong? Because I knew when you were speaking, because I look up to you, and you've been kind of a mentor of sorts for a lot of us around here. And I was just thinking, what did I do? And so, yeah, there's always that mixture and worry, and sometimes it does look like, as you worded it, like somebody's getting flamed, and so, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel bad about that, and I'm glad though that we were adult enough to talk about it. And if I come across as righteous at times, it's because, guess what? I've made a whole bunch of mistakes, and I really don't want anybody else to make the same mistake I made. So, but again, God bless and curse the internet at the same time.
Right. Well, and it's honorable about what you were trying to do, and it just it's a great reminder that we're all colleagues, we're all friends, and we're all looking out for the best interest of not only us, but we're also looking out the best interest for other things that can be impacted, in this case, wildlife, because that's the last thing I want is to cause that. And so it's great information to learn, and again, knowing that these are your friends and colleagues, that they're not trying to bash you and make you look like an idiot, is really where we have to just kind of, always focus ourselves. And I know as well as anybody, it's hard for me too, because I tend to always think, oh, somebody's jumping my ass about something. But it's just a good reminder, and it was a great piece of information that you offered.
And I think it's just a good lesson for us all to know in this field is there is no textbook. There's no,
right.
I mean, there's good ways and better ways to do things, but there's no necessarily right or wrong way to do these things. So we need to have this dialogue and this back and forth talk, because you may think, okay, I've thought everything out, I'm doing it right, I'm being respectful, whether it's going on a Bigfoot scout or paranormal, like anything that you're doing. Someone else is going to have a different thought process, or they might think of the one thing you didn't even think of, and it's going to affect, everything. It might not just affect wildlife. It could affect, if you go to a cemetery or something, you might not think of something that could affect everybody out there. There's people who probably go on ghost hunts or whatever, and they think they're doing fine. They don't realize, though, coming in at 2:00 and not getting it okay, that's trespassing. It's illegal, and now it's affecting everybody else because no one can come in now.
Right.
So it's just kind of nice that we are all adults. We need to act like adults and be able to have this dialogue and
leave the egos at the door.
Exactly. We're all learning. We're all in the same boat, same team. We got to act that way.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe in the next set of Ghost Hunters conferences, instead of having the do's of ghost hunting, we'll have the don'ts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and that is happening. Who are the ladies that have the handout about mold and mildew and hazmat and ghost hunting?
Oh yeah, paranormal safety. Elaine, I'm totally spacing her name right now. I'm sorry, Elaine, but yeah, I know who you're talking about. ParanormalSafety.com.
Yeah, and bravo, because that's something a lot of people don't even consider. Is you may well send the janitor down there with a respirator, but ghost hunters don't need any.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Now, speaking of the whole do's and don'ts, I guess we can kind of roll into the segment I affectionately like to call talking shit. And in this segment, we can kind of just, talk about some of those things, the things that we feel are being done right or not being done enough that could help us out better. Do you have any input on things that you've observed or witnessed and watched with regards to the do's and don'ts?
Sorry, I was being overtaken by a malevolent spirit. No.
Exorcise that demon.
Hallelujah. There are so many do's and so many don'ts, but they all revolve around think beyond the moment.
Right.
And again, I'm guilty of this. When we spoke before, I talked quite a bit about location, particularly, let's face it, cemeteries. To a lot of people, it is the grist to the paranormal mill where they get seemingly EVPs all the time, and so because of that, they gravitate toward them. But there are a lot of considerations. What if the cemetery happens to be private? Mm-hmm. What if the cemetery happens to be unsafe?
Right.
A lot of unsafeness, and so now on the other hand, there are some paranormal societies that have actually adopted cemeteries where they do cleanup and they beautify and things like that. So, and those groups are thinking beyond just the moment of catching an EVP.
Yeah, and it's showing too that not only are they, have intentions to do research there, but they're trying to strengthen a relationship between the people who either own or manage those cemeteries and the groups, so that way they can allow for future endeavors and research while investing kind of right back into it, with their own sweat equity, if you want to call it.
Yeah, and that leads to it's so funny and ironic where ghost hunting is, and some people separate out the word spiritual from religious, but ghost hunting is multiple levels. Yes, you are investigating the unknown and trying to make it known, but it is also a spiritual journey for the people doing it. It reaffirms faith. And so many ghost hunters, paranormalists, feel isolated from the mundane, ordinary citizens too. And so what you're talking about is re-identifying and getting out, becoming one with the people who don't know and don't care about ghosts, and maybe bringing them in and educating them a little bit.
Yeah. Now, if you had any advice to give, like brand new green, investigators that are wanting to pursue this field of research, what advice would you give them that you felt was the most important advice to start with?
Take your time, do a lot of reading, and see if you can't find groups whose approach interests you. Now, mixed in with that is be honest with them, and if you want to be part of their group, that's fine. But also, if you want to ultimately set up your own group, paranormal group, tell them that too.
Yeah. So that they understand that you're coming in to learn from them, and then sooner or later you're going to branch off. Exactly.
You and I have both seen groups form. They start up usually as one person who brings in relatives or co-workers. They get big, they get successful, and as everybody gains expertise, they start wanting to go different directions. The physical approach, the gizmo approach, the clairvoyant approach, the demon biblically oriented approach.
Right.
And all too often, these groups try and stay together too long, and then you just have this horrible breakup.
Yeah.
And
it gets nasty.
And which is one of the reasons why I don't have a group.
Tell you what, I said it over the weekend too. I'm so glad I don't have to run a team anymore. My very first one was a great experience in many ways, but it also came with a lot of hardships and some serious, heartaches as well. I had people turn on me, come up with crazy, lies, steal from my nonprofit. It was a waste of their time and energy. And because I'm one of those kind of people who do care about what other people say and do towards me, it impacted me pretty, bad. And so over the years, it just kind of became more of a hand holding, and I didn't feel I was pulling my weight as, a leader. So I just decided to, move on and let them run it. And ultimately they gave the group back to me, but, and they're all great people, but, I loved working just as, an autonomous situation, which is why I kind of named ASEP what I did. But, then I brought on my beautiful fiance, Nicole, and she's awesome. She's kicking ass and taking names, and it's great. We're small still, and we're not really like a team. And what's great is I can call you up, Jeff, and say, Jeff, I've got a case coming up. You want to join me? And you can say yay or nay, and we can bring along whoever we want, but we don't have that constant overhead of dealing with other people and worrying about them, not being forthright about things.
Yeah. And for a long time, it was myself and my wife, and we're no longer married, but we had some enjoyable times. Toward the end, she got tired of staying up till 3 a.m, and so after a while, it became conventions and really fun road trips.
Right.
And those are also degrees of paranormal investigation. People should think about setting up in within their own mind, what kind of investigator am I going to be? Is it going to be recreational ghost hunting where I stay at haunted hotels 3 weekends a month?
Right.
Or is it one of these things where I am going to spend $5,000 on various gizmos and stay in one place and only that place until I solve the mystery?
Right.
So wait. Can we go back a little bit? We have the option of just staying in haunted hotels like 3 weekends every month. Can
Ben,
I do that
did
one?
you not tell her that?
I want to sign up for
Jeff,
that.
Shut it. I'm going to be broke.
I want a paranormal massage.
It's either you dump $5,000 in gear, right? Or you dump $5,000 in trips and stays at the hotels. Yeah, right.
And mimosas and
Yeah, I'd like some of those. I want that one.
See, now you got her all excited.
I signed up for the wrong thing. Dang.
She's with the boring group.
Well,
so
this, and that's what also one of the things that gets confusing when you read people's posts and they say, "Hey, had a great investigation here, and here," and then you get back to them and it turns out it was recreational.
Right.
And that's not illegal. There's nothing wrong with it at all. More power to everybody. But it gets confusing again since we don't have terminology.
Yeah. And that's why, like, for me, I'm not a hobbyist when it comes to this. I always describe myself as kind of your passionate, legitimate paranormal researcher. And as a researcher, I think you become several different things. You wear different hats. You're an analyst, you're a, investigator, you're a historical researcher, interviewer, all that stuff. Whereas, some of these folks, they just want to get to the fun stuff, and they don't do any of the other things, and it's either hobby or recreational. So, and again, like you said, more power to them, as long as you're not screwing up stuff and making it so I can't get into the Fort Vancouver barracks. Oh wait, that already happened.
Gotta get past that.
Shit.
Gotta get past.
Well, yeah, I'm supposed to cuss here, aren't I? Shit.
Oh, the token cuss word. Thank you, sir. You're a good man.
It's one of those things after all these years that was kind of trained and punished out of me was cussing. So right. Now I'm doing it again. Well, and you
can blame me.
I will. But the other bad fallout of people equating light ghost hunting with ghost hunting heavy is they get offended if you start challenging their results. And this
right.
Let's be adults. Let's
Put
talk
the
about
ego
this.
away. Yeah. This is true. That's an ongoing issue constantly. You see it all the time. People critiquing other people for what they do. Now, I wish, like you said, we had defined, kinds of paranormal research or ghost hunting and things like that. Some definitions, so that way people can say, okay, I proudly wear the hat of being a ghost hunter, and this is how I do things. And okay, fine, we'll see you in the news when you break the law every time. And then you've got your researchers who do the very boring stuff, and they put on their Facebook pages, yeah, we've done investigations, and nobody ever sees any evidence because 99% of the time they're walking away with nothing that they feel is solid, credible proof, and so on and so forth. But maybe someday, and I don't know if I'll ever have that kind of drive in me to see if I can muster up an army of people that support that and back it and turn the tides here in the world of paranormal research to have that. But who knows? Yeah, and so,
it's all changing too because TV shows, paranormal TV shows.
Right.
I really see a trend, and I don't have the numbers for you, but think of the number of paranormal TV shows on various cable networks 5 years ago versus now.
Yeah.
Probably half as many.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think some of these shows where the producers are thinking about ratings and the hosts have dubious qualifications that's really been bad for serious paranormalism. So in some ways, getting some of these shows off the air can be a good thing.
Exactly.
Having said that, any of these shows that are on right now, I didn't say get rid of you. Don't sue me.
Now, speaking of that, you've been on some shows, right?
Yeah. One of my first entree into this was in the early 2000s. There was a show called Haunted History, and it was kind of the quintessential model for how TV portrayed ghosts and the paranormal for many years.
Right.
The show would travel around and they would find people who were ghost experiencers. They would do some interviews, talking headshots with them. They would get historians or experts in the field, do interviews with them, do reenactments, and then have some kind of closing monologue. And that kind of old school I like, because it oftentimes does leave it up to the viewer.
Right.
Not quite so sensational as oh, the ghost scratched me. You remember that was almost a fad about 8 years ago. Every paranormal show had somebody get scratched.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I think I'm more drawn to that old school, like the Unsolved Mysteries and In Search Of and Haunted History and, those kind of shows that were out there. They presented the stuff and ultimately left it up to you.
It's like a choose your own adventure book.
Yeah.
Well, and documentary, when you mentioned In Search Of, it was done in a documentary style.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very credible if they're factual and well done.
Right.
most recently I've done a couple of stints on the Dead Files, and one of them was in downtown Vancouver at the Slocum House in Esther Short Park, and that aired, I think, the same year. And oddly, in 2014, I did a spot for the Dead Files, and that was that Staten, Oregon, south of south of Salem. That aired about 3 months ago, so they carried it over. And I can't give you details, but just a couple weekends ago, I did another spot with the Dead Files, and all of them as a historian. And
sure.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, sure. I mean, and that's exactly what you also are, as a historian.
Yeah, and so I do like that show. They were pretty much as advertised. I've never met their clairvoyant. Whenever I was there, she was nowhere around, because that's part of their show is they sequester her.
Right.
And I know on TV shows like this, everybody has a ghost hunter TV show that they really, really love, and then one that they really, really don't like.
Right.
But having said that, even if the one show you don't like kind of contacts you and says, "Hey, would you be one of our guest walk-ons?" Almost all of us, me included, would probably say, "Yeah."
Yeah, if the money's right and the opportunity seems legitimate, and of course I've been through the ringer where I've worked with a production company and they were going to cast me as the lead in a paranormal reality show, and you go through all the negotiations, and of course me being who I am, I'm like, well, I want to know though, you're not gonna make this another one of those fake shows, and they tell you whatever they need to tell you, and I know that's what happened, and so I likely would have been in that same boat. I would have sold my soul, and I it is what it is. But the show never happened, so I agree with you. I mean, we're all going to talk a lot of shit, but when they call, you're going to be like, oh, cool.
Well, and hopefully we have enough stick-to-itness or enough, let me think about this. I also occasionally get the phrases headhunted. And I remember I was talking to one show, and I said, hey, how about this as a novel approach? We do ghost hunting in the daytime.
You can't do that. The ghosts only come out at night.
Crickets, yeah, yeah. So we're kind of at the end of the show. I'd like for you real quick to, pimp out some of your Facebook page, your books that you've written, or even co-written, as well as links to your website and maybe wherever to get the books, which I think you said is also embedded on your website. So do some shameless plugging.
Wow, shameless plugging. I'm about 5'10", hazel eyes. Oh, single.
Long walks on the beach.
Aww.
That's right. Holding hands, cooking gourmet meals. But
do you like pina coladas?
Mojitos, actually.
Oh, okay.
For people interested in my books, my website is ghostsandcritters.com, and it is on the website. Most of it's free. You can get a little bit of a blog that I don't update very often, but I've got an archive of other people's ghost stories. You can buy my books on the site as well, and contact me there. I do have a Facebook page just under Jefferson Davis, but it's a mix. You would actually see I'm heavily involved in historic preservation. I have a 501c3 that is the Vancouver Barracks Military Association. If you're interested in serious history, you can look up the vbma.us. That's our website there. And I don't turn down Facebook friends, but you would also see a whole bunch of family stuff and history, political stuff. So I recommend people maybe becoming Facebook friends, but it'd be really selective as far as what I can respond to.
Yeah. We need to get the GPS coordinates to your home so that way people don't call every Jeff Davis in the phone book. They can just go right to your house and be ultra creepy.
Oh yeah, thanks for that shameless plug. For those of you who've not heard me rant, part of what happens when you're like the groundbreaker, the first one, is I did have things like that happen. When many years ago, I did have somebody call my house at about 1:30 or 2 in the morning. They called every other Jeff Davis in the phone book before they got to me because they were, for some reason, going to go back into their haunted house in the middle of the night. And once Google Maps started showing where my house was, I had somebody show up about between 10 and 11 p.m. to talk to me.
That's crazy.
It's a crazy world.
That is ultra creepy. Yeah. Well, I would like to thank you for not only one sitting down and chatting with us, but for a second time to do this. Again, the reason why I did it was the quality was so bad, and I feel it's a disservice to my guests to, have a poor quality sounding show, and so I didn't want to do that to you. Especially since I consider you a friend and colleague, and plus we live in the same town, and I'm pretty sure you probably own some weapons. At any rate,
and knows how to use them.
Yeah, and so no, I just wanted to make sure we represented you in the best light, and so thank you once again for taking the time out of your life to sit down and chat with us.
And I appreciate it, Ben. It's always a pleasure seeing and talking to you. This is the bad part about not being paid professionals is we can only get together individually or groups only once or twice a year, and I regret that.
Yeah, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, thank you again for talking with us, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right, great. We'll talk to you later, and look forward to people visiting me online.
Sounds good. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Jeff.
But wait, there's more.
I'm recording us again. Jeff, I want you to sing. Do that thing you do, that special song.
Thing.
Oh, my sound check.
There you go.
I am the very pattern of a modern major general of information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England and all fights historical, from Marathon to Waterloo, in order categorical. In short, I am the very model of a modern major general. And I'm teaming with a lot of news up the square, the hypotenuse. And that's about where I lose.
That's awesome. I had to get that on recording.
You're paralyzed, aren't you? Unable to move.
Right, so we just finished chatting with Mr. Jeff Davis, and that was nice to be able to record it this time in better quality.
I'm just glad we didn't offend him enough the first time that he agreed to come back and do it all again.
Yeah. No, I think he's pretty thick-skinned, and he's, mature enough guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he is a good dude. And I own a bunch of his books. I highly recommend it. He's got some pretty good stories and information in his book about the Pacific Northwest, or specifically Clark County, Washington as well. Mm-hmm. So at any rate...
go buy his books, check out his website,
definitely.
friend him.
Yeah.
Don't go to his house or call him in the middle of the night.
Yeah, don't. All right, well, other than that, I think it'll be nice. We're going to take a little bit of a nice summer break and enjoy the good weather, and then we'll be back to bring on another guest here, and we got to get that guest, of course.
Will we have another person?
Well, yeah, so that's in September, but I'd like to get at least one more for August. So hopefully we can do that soon. So if you want to be on this show, call us. Hit us up.
Call me, maybe.
Preach, bro, preach. All right, everybody have a good night. Thanks for tuning in.
It was a nightmare.